center on my side, we're seeing a lot of stuff getting thrown out there in communities that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I was working with North Georgia Christian Academy for about like the last 4 months or so, and talking with them, I realized there was a little bit of an information gap going on. So I said, why not? I mean, just try to get everybody at the table, have an initial open forum, and actually get a charter started for a crisis management working group. Basically, where we can meet on a monthly basis, look at everybody's plans from an overall perspective, both public school, private school, critical infrastructures, courthouses, hospitals, everything else. And let's really kind of get the community involved, especially the stakeholders. Because one thing is that everybody's got to deal with is budget, right? Budget and time. That's the big stuff. But I'm speaking with this officer here. A school in Ohio yesterday just spent $25,000 in first quarter budget to deploy pepper spray inside their school. The pepper spray system that alerts law enforcement and everything else. But nobody really talked to them about once you deploy it, what's going to happen? Well, it goes everywhere. And then you have law enforcement, first responders going into a contaminated environment, right? So now, if you're not trained with gas masks, everything else, and they put it out publicly, so now if somebody's planning to do something there, they're like, oh, well, how am I going to get away with this? Well, I can go ahead and deploy it, have a gas mask on, and wait for people to come find it, right? So that's where it's at. Most of you got email invites, so you had a little bit of my background, but I'll just go ahead and give you a high level of it. I spent 14 years in the Navy, both active reserve, 7 years active, 7 reserve, at Naval Special Warfare, small boat unit team. So I just gave a good, heavy guys high fives and rides. From there, went over to the DoD side of the house, left service, started working on intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance programs for the DoD. And then from there, I started working overseas as a private military contractor. Worked in Iraq from 2003 to 2008 for diplomatic security services. Then from there, left and went to Afghanistan, training Afghan National Army commandos on small unit tactics and weapons. From there, basically came home, started Heitman International. I've spent the last year and a half over in DC working with diplomatic security services, law enforcement training center, training special agents to go overseas to do their job as regional security officers for the Atlas program. That's me in a nutshell. I'm going to pop Kevin in here real quick. And we had to basically change up a little bit because of what Kevin's dealing with his family. We're going to bring him online here. Kevin, you want to go ahead and kind of give them a background on you? And
Sure. Excuse me. Thanks for having me. I truly do appreciate it more than you know. I've been friends with Justin's for a little bit now, and his resume is much more than what he gives himself credit for, first of all. So it's an honor to be here and speaking with the audience that he's assembled, but also with him. I'm just an average everyday dad who started a YouTube channel and an educational piece in my world to make sure that my kids were properly trained with firearms, and again, wouldn't come across a situation later in life that the firearm became a danger. Little did we know that after almost 6 years of hosting a show called Gun News Weekly, where literally every Thursday night we went live for an hour and talked about all of the school shootings since Sandy Hook, all the mass shootings that you've seen, all the active killer situations that you've seen across the country. But in addition to that, all of the quote unquote good guy with the gun stories as well that don't get reported. We try to touch as many of those as we could. Having all of that information in addition to, again, about 1,500 videos on YouTube, from everything from training videos to how to clean a gun or the latest AK from Century Arms. All of a sudden it happened in my backyard. And I have 2 children that were in the 1,300 building next to the 1,200 building where the shooting went down. I'm in the middle of writing a book because my experience is quite unique in that all of a sudden being in a car and getting a text from your child saying there's a shooter, there's a code red at their school, where basically that's kind of what I did. I was in the tactical world. I was in the gun world. It's a shock to the system, to say the least, but at the same time, I was probably more prepared for it and better prepared for it than most. It's 5 months later now, and everything from the corruption that you read about to all the stuff you don't read about, it's been an unbelievable change to my life, my family's life, the entire community here in Parkland. And so hopefully I'll be able to lend a little bit of insight of A, what you can hopefully prevent, but B, any questions that you may have. I am literally an open book. There's nothing you can't ask me today. So Thanks again, Justin.
Oh, no problem, man. So, that being said, and again, I know the buzzwords right now are active shooter, active aggressor, everything else. A lot of people are focused on that, but that's not it's only one piece of it, right? So you have to have plans in place at some point in time. And I'm sure with the way our community is, especially with the sheriff's office, law enforcement, I know our schools are in the process. Our mindset here is starting to shift, which is great. But have we integrated our plans yet? Have we actually sat down and looked at, Gilmer County High School reactive shooter plan, or active shooter plan, and has Gilmer County High School shared that with a private school, just so that we have basically a template format to actually look at this stuff and actually come together and provide those ideas instead of like killing budgets like some of these schools are doing. And again, I'm gonna knock on the private sector, because for us to make money on the security side of the house, something bad's gonna happen because everything's reactive, right? But instead of being reactive and just throwing stuff out there and asking you guys to spend budget on stuff, why aren't more of us coming to you guys and saying, hey, let's get together? That's why we're here. I had a PowerPoint. I'm not going to really worry about that. It is what it is. I'd like to keep Kevin up and interact with that. For one thing, and Kevin and I were talking, and the biggest thing is that even though Parkland had alert systems, everything else in place, how long was it before you got your text?
My text was actually pretty quick because they identified the gunshots pretty quickly.
Gotcha.
And the code red was called out. The code red was called out pretty quickly. And response was, again, a whole nother topic and a whole nother day, but it wasn't immediate, but they did get on scene pretty quickly. And again, there was a resource officer on scene, and the students were all made aware of it pretty much as it started. Mm-hmm. The other thing was the residue and the smoke from the gun itself is what set off the fire alarm, is what they're reporting. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of confusion. They had a fire alarm earlier in the day. Standard drill, everybody out, everybody gets accounted for, everybody comes back in. All of a sudden, they hear these noises, fire alarm goes off, code red gets called. A lot of chaos.
Right. So, and again, that being the point to this is that by having these crisis management working group program in place in our county, we can actually start to deconflict this information. One thing I just showed Kevin this morning is I have access to software called Data Miner. So I can actually actively monitor with my investigation company what's going on social media. And it's a pretty nice little tool. I'll just go ahead and pop it up here for you. But Data Miner is actually basically owned by Twitter. So Twitter allows their access to all their analytics, everything else for hashtagging, all that. It mainly monitors Twitter accounts, but it also does what they call chatter. So it'll actually monitor Facebook, Instagram, Weenie, every bit of the social media side. Now, I know from a law enforcement's perspective, that First and Fourth Amendment right kind of gets you guys a little bit, because you have to have the warrant in order to go check these accounts out. This is just a tool that's out there that the county can actually use or get a license for to use and then set up. Does that make sense to everybody? So the other thing is too about this is that bringing everybody together, is you can also actually see that there's also technology out there that's available that maybe we weren't aware of inside the county itself. Anybody got any questions so far? Good to go. Kind of just, I don't want to ramble.
I think my question was a good one earlier, so I'm going to throw it out there. I was saying, can you put in a list of 5 or 10 high school names or middle school names and have that be part of the search, not just, bomb, gun, etc.
That's correct. So in the tool itself, we can set up all the names of the schools, hospital, news agencies, all the PDs, all the fire departments, everything else, and that'll actually pick up the chatter as it comes. So, which is a very, very nice tool. For instance, and I'll go back to it real quick, I'll just bring up the analytical data. Area analysis, historical references. This was the Santa Fe attack or incident. I'll just say incident, not attack, because we're not really doing that. But as you can see, the initial was about 10 a.m. May 17th, and then you see the uptake of the Twitter feeds itself. So in the chatter that was going on. Now, this is a nice thing too, where it comes out to what I like, is the fact that not only can I see the tweets, the photos, but I also see who did it, what time, and their location. So that can actually be put out there, which is really nice. So
how does it alert you?
Two ways. So I have a phone app myself, or it'll actually email me as well. And then when you stick your feeds up in the urgent side of that piece of software, it'll automatically notify your phone, email you at the same time, and that's pretty much it. So, or you have somebody actively monitoring this system. That's really the way it goes. So, but one of the other things too that we did with North Georgia Christian Academy was put together a template to inform the parents. Like, what is your what does a lockdown mean? This is what it means, X, Y, Z. And it was something, Alicia, that you guys hadn't done before. Right. So it's okay to put the information out there to a certain extent. And I also know that internal stuff does not need to be put out there just because it just doesn't need to be public at points and times. But if you're not informing the parents, they come hauling, in their car to the environment, to the scene, that just clogs it up for you guys to get there. And then now you're trying to deconflict between who's actually doing what and who's actually on scene. So another piece of this that we've done as well is with the State Department, rewriting their entire compound defense plans. Overseas, with that environment, not only are we dealing with actually embassies and consulates, but we're also dealing with chief of mission houses. We're dealing with American schools that are overseas. So these are all plans and things that we've done already in those harsh environments. So bringing that knowledge back to here, I think will help all of us at the same time. Not that anybody's doing anything wrong or anything like that. Please don't take that as anything other than it's another entity with information that can bring information here. So, but some things that we've done there, and I'll just bring up that piece, is template forming actually based on events. So mapping these things out to where you actually have perimeter information, everything else, locations of medical kits, AEDs, all that good stuff. Being able to go through a phased situation. So it's a pretty nice little piece. It takes some time to put these things together. But another thing I'm not seeing as well is, real estate community has a great 3D mapping tools, right? So why aren't we 3D mapping critical infrastructures so that it helps our law enforcement EMS also to pre-plan and pre-train for incidents that may come or may not come. So that's just another little tool there. I'll just open up to you guys. I really appreciate y'all being here. So I'll just open up to you for questions back and forth, concerns, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so the software that you were showing us that tracks the trends on the social medias, how do you get that? Where is that available from?
So it's available from a company called Data Miner, and I can put them in contact with you guys directly for the county. And they would basically issue a license to use the software, and then you can just monitor yourself. Again, it's just information that's out there that you guys can utilize.
What's the cost usually?
So my license is around $10,000 as a veteran-owned small business. Some of the Fortune 500 companies, they charge up to $40,000 for those, just so you kind of have. No, it's a one-time fee. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then you have access to that.
Public sector, government.
Are user fee each year?
That I don't know, but I'll find out and definitely get that information back to you. As far as their licensing term goes, I know where my licensing term is, and that's basically it's a $10,000 fee, and I've got access to the system full time for my investigation side. So,
Justin, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I don't know what the legal ramifications are of this, and maybe there's someone in the room that could speak on it in terms of privacy rights and such. But I'm looking back at some of the missteps, and one of the sections that I'm writing currently is, what did we miss? What could have been done? What can be prevented in the future? And I'm wondering what the legal ramifications are, or the potential of IDs that have been identified as potential problems. At whatever that bar is set, however many times the cops have to go to their house or they have to threaten a teacher before that gets set. But they've been put into this side set of, this is a potential ticking time bomb. Can you utilize that software to look and track that specific student's social media over the last week, month, year, and see what the trend is looking at, and if it's getting more vicious, if there's more indications of problems, so that things can be done?
Yes. So inside that data miner software, you can also basically, if there's a specific tag that somebody's using, you can actually add that in there, and it'll actually start trending and picking up what they're actually tweeting out or putting out what they call chatter off Facebook, Instagram, all of that.
Can we put in an actual student's name is my question.
They're going to mainly do all their analytics off the handles is what they're going to do. Because again, based on how you set up your accounts for Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everything else, everybody's not going to just use their generalized name. So, but if you have, if you've got some way, and again, I don't, it's a school process or even, a law enforcement, maybe question or legal question at that point, from signing up or going into, getting your kid initially into school, that process. I mean, you could probably ask, right? Can you, Shanna? Can you ask them for social media? No?
Not unless we have a reason.
Not unless you have a reason. Gotcha.
But you could, if you identified that person's Twitter handle was rockclimber45, you could put in hashtag rockclimber45 and go down that road?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
They're putting that information out publicly over the internet.
Right.
But only if it's the public information.
Right.
What about if they send a Snapchat to their 2 Snapchat friends that I don't think.
Yeah, that's a no-no because that crosses that line. So,
Yeah.
Does that only work in English? Do they do Spanish as well, or any other language?
yes, sir, they do. They actually go in. I'm actually monitoring some clients over in the country of Georgia. So they actually go in and translate all the information back out to English. So yes, and they're up to, I want to say, 175 languages right now, give or take a few. So,
Does it?
I think that's
I'm sorry. Does it monitor like private tweets, or if someone sets up their profile where it's not shown to the general public but only to those who follow them? Can it still track that, or is it only their public tweets?
So data miner actually hits the cloud base. So
Okay.
when they immediately go out, regardless of whether that tweet profile is private, it still is up and goes out with a hashtag to it. So yes, it'll pick it up.
Okay.
It does.
So nothing you ever say on Twitter is private.
No. I think that's again, you got to look at how Facebook's acting right now with what's going on legally and all that. So it's just one of those deals. So, but yeah, very very nice system.
I think the FBI studies that have come out recently with the pre-attack behaviors, you can find those online on the FBI websites. What their behaviors are. A lot of this is proven to be a big part of it. They talk about it before they do it. This is critical.
Anybody else got any questions? So where are we from an aspect of community wise? Where are we as far as like planning? I mean, I know North Georgia Christian Academy because I've been working with them and started this process, and I'm sure the law enforcement departments have their management plans, their crisis management plans. And Shannon, I know you guys are working under construction and all that. And you guys have your stuff on the table as well, and all that. And then I know Fannin County School Board just approved for their teachers to carry firearms, which brings in a whole different element of where you go with that. So, and I know you guys, Shannon, you mentioned that you guys have tabled a couple of plans.
We've tabled the staff carrying firearms.
Yeah.
Conferred back and forth with our local law enforcement, and we decided to add additional SRO.
Mm-hmm.
We have purchased bio cases, like what's at the courthouse for an AR, and those have been purchased.
Right.
The training is ongoing.
Right, exactly. And then, that's great. And we'll, everybody's addressing, and, Kevin, you've seen a lot of places and dealing with a couple of companies that you've dealt with. It's all fine and dandy to have and put those firearms in place. But if you're not addressing the medical side of it too, that's a liability that puts on everybody. So, that's one reason why I've got the mobilized rescue kits through my company, because again, when I started working with North Georgia Christian Academy, with my niece going there, I was like, if somebody is an immediate responder, and Kevin, you can attest with this with Parkland, because there was a couple of kids that went one in anaphylactic shock, right? And there was some other piece that happened.
the notion is that if there had been equipment in the classrooms, there definitely could have been some prevention of death there.
Right.
Without a doubt.
So there's tools out there because, again, the reason why I'm bringing up these kits is because I could go out and buy an individual first aid kit, but, unless you've got a heavy medical background training, do you know how to apply a chest seal to a sucking chest wound? Probably not most people, right? So again, there's a technology that's out there that maybe you guys and gals have not seen or heard of that we can provide from the private sector to get you the information out there. The comprehensive kit, which is the hard case one, runs $21.99. The individual compact kit is $180, and then the medical trauma iPack, which is an individual public access kit with 4 trauma kits in it, that's about $675. And again, there's if you purchase it in large quantities, there's discounts. There's discount for school, law enforcement, that kind of stuff. So, but it's nice. It has integrated technology. These things go to your phone. Everything else. Let me just check my time. And it just empowers a bystander to be able to provide medical attention to an individual. And the way the software is written is the protocols inside the software were developed from emergency room doctors, special operations medics, so out in the field there, EMTs, all the way down to trauma doctors. So that software is automatically updated in these kits. And again, you can have it immediately on your phone. It'll walk you actually through everything. It'll give you CPR. It'll tell you how to deal with anaphylactic shock. The bigger kits can actually integrate for EpiPens and also Narcan. So if you have a new deputy or officer on the field that can pull this kit out and they forget, because again, go to school, get some TE/CCC done, you're going to lose it in about 19 days. So that's just the way it goes. But they're available. That's stuff that's out there. Yes, ma'am.
I'm in the city elevator on the LPC council, and all the schools are located in the city with the exception of one. So I'm very concerned about, our participation in any projects, especially this one. And fire department and police department are very soon today. So what would be the procedures or processes for us to be involved?
For the city council to be involved?
For the whole city?
The whole city? I mean, just this right here. I mean, us coming together and talking and kind of open this up. And, my plan is to have another meeting on August 8th. That's a little bit more private for us to actually kind of put out information. Because again, once we start talking and going towards plans and processes and how the community is going to be involved, there's some sensitivity on those items. So again, it's either designating somebody to be involved with the crisis management working group once the charter's in place and everything else, and identifying those people, and then working towards the community involvement. Did that answer your question? Ish?
Well, I think the people who are here today, these are representatives, because,
Right.
maybe those people who are
You guys have anything for Kevin?
Maybe a personal question. What did he do? He got his tweet from his kids, and what did he instructed his kids to do?
It's a great question. And it's something that I've gone over in my head many, many times. But in essence, we had a discussion 2 weeks prior to the code red at dinner time. And the question that one of my children brought up was, hey, Dad, what do I do if there's a code red and I have a hall pass and I'm in the bathroom? Because at that point, the teachers are instructed to immediately lock down the classrooms. They would go from the bathroom and all the doors would be locked. And so we had that conversation, and I gave them full permission to find the nearest fence, jump it, and run until you can't breathe anymore, and call me, and I'll come get you. I gave them permission to, even in the face of an administrator, if everything in their body was telling them run right, and the administrator was pointing everyone left, I told them, run right, as fast as you can, as hard as you can. We'd had these conversations, and I had an odd sense of calm come over me that my kids were safe. So the fact that I was communicating with them, I knew they weren't taking fire. From there, a guy that drives around with what most would consider overkill, but, a vest and better than average weapons in his car. I found out that I was, even as trained as I am, there's not enough time to respond as a parent. By the time I got anywhere close, every law agency, personnel and all the parents that were getting cell phone calls and text from their kids, it was completely clogged. You couldn't get anywhere close. I responded like most parents would. You freak out. How is this happening here? And in the aftermath, you can't believe that it did happen here. And to elaborate a little bit, throw it out there, these are not easy conversations. That's when someone said, how do we put this out there to people and everything? People don't want to think about bloody kids. When you think about medical equipment and that kind of stuff, that means that someone's going to have to know how to do it. And if you're doing it, that means that something happened horrible. These are not things that people want to think about, talk about, and most importantly, act about. So again, the fact that you're all collectively there, I'm incredibly impressed with your community. What I'll tell you is, and I'd say this to any community in America, whatever the cost is, whatever it takes to get it done so that your school is better protected tomorrow than it is today, anything you can do to prevent what's happened here, you should do. And I can tell you that retroactively, there are, again, now it's all reactive here. And I'm sure you've seen the news headlines from the clear backpacks. Sounds to me like they're installing metal detectors as we speak. And again, this is as close as home as it gets for a dad. I literally take my kids 1.5 miles down the street to their school. So back to the when it happens and that personal side of it, again, I'm writing extensively about this because that's my therapy. I have such a unique perspective on this, knowing about the fact that I'm in a community that in essence totally different than yours. You're rural Georgia. We're suburban Fort Lauderdale, so to speak, Miami, so to speak, and it's pretty liberal here. And the gun is the problem, and the gun is the demon, and you can see what's happened from here. A gun did this through a very evil person who made a decision to go murder kids. And if there's any way to get to those kids before they make that decision, we have to do that collectively in America. And I don't know there is no single answer. There is no single answer. It's all of these different layers collectively. And then hopefully people are paying attention enough on the front end. That's why, again, I'm fascinated by that software that he has. And the other thing I would point out is this: don't baby the kids. These teenagers, I think a lot of people want to protect them just because they're still our kids and everything like that. But the reality of the day in America is these things are happening. They've happened in the past. They'll probably happen again. And acting like it's not going to ever happen, which is the bubble that was over Parkland, Florida prior to the shooting, it can be burst. Please, anything else?
Yes, sir.
As all of us watch that 24/7, I saw one of the parents say his son knew who it was when they first heard the shots. They said collectively it's him. I bet it's him. Are there any way that you can monitor the children's chat of their local knowledge, so to speak, interschool?
From an investigation security company standpoint, I'm kind of restricted the same way law enforcement is to certain aspects of it. The only way I could do that from a private security standpoint is to actually have a contract in place for that specific individual to be under surveillance, that kind of stuff. I can't speak for the law enforcement side, so, but for me on the private sector, there are some restrictions as far as doing that. I do know, behavioral analysis. They're talking CCTV, closed circuit TV systems now with analytics on it as far as monitoring how a kid's acting in a school and giving those alerts out. But again, those are very costly, cost prohibitive systems that are out there. Yeah.
Did that particular guy, was he tweeting a lot? Was he putting stuff out on social media about what he was going to do? Or was it just post-event knowledge of his previous history with law enforcement in the community?
It's a great question. Yeah, he did a bunch of different things, but here's the interesting one. It was reported to the police by someone that he was, again, this stuff's changing so fast for us as adults. He was on an online gaming session. So he was on video game, playing a game with a group of other people. And he was putting out language and signals that made one of the guys that had a headset on in some other part of the country say, this is not right. And he called the police. He let them know about this guy. They investigated it, and it went nowhere. So it's not just Twitter and Facebook at this point. Is what my point is there. But to answer your question, I haven't watched them, but I understand their cell phone video that he put out or that he had recorded of himself, just prior to the day of, saying, I'm gonna go do this. The other thing, back to the question prior, real quick. And there is no easy answer to this one, but this is something that I've learned along the way that I can't not tell you. And it's like one of those things that I think most people know this, and we can all think back to third grade. And I'm just using third grade as the arbitrary number because I've talked to 2nd through 5th grade teachers. Elementary school teachers know who these kids are. This is not a big secret. By the time the kid gets to 6th grade, all of a sudden, he morphs into this different kid. They know who the troubled kids are at a very young age. Doing something about it in America has become very difficult for all kinds of different reasons. But if there was some way to take that knowledge of a 3rd grade teacher who goes home at night and says, honey, there's one in my class and I just know he's trouble. They know. So do with that what you can and absorb that as you can. And I don't know what to do with it even here. But I think back to the 1 or 2 kids that we had trouble with in high school. And yeah, we knew they were bad kids back in the day. Not easy stuff. Because you're talking about going to a parent and saying, we think your kid's going to do something. Can't do that.
It's true. This is the way it is. So part of also too on this crisis management working group is also doing post-recovery plan operations. Do you mind if I share the reason why you're not here?
No, go right ahead.
Okay. So Kevin was originally going to fly up and be here in person, and it's a couple days ago when your daughter, 4th of July is what it was.
Yeah.
So 4th of July, we were talking, and his daughter was at work. People were shooting off fireworks. She immediately went into basically a PTSD order. So locked herself in, what was it, broom closet?
No, she went to the bathroom. Got away from everybody.
Yeah, take it from there, because that way they just have an understanding. Like, it's not just us talking here and putting plans in place, but we also have to have that post-recovery piece as well that we got to deal with inside the community.
Again, I don't even know how you begin to tackle it. They brought in the dogs. That was the biggest thing that was affected a lot of kids and helped a bunch of kids open up is the PTSD dogs that they brought into the schools. What do they call them? Comfort dogs. But they were, and she's been great. Both my kids have been doing very well. And again, my measure of it is as long as they're not in their bedroom with the lights off, listening to depressing music, talking to no one, as long as they're talking, as long as we're having conversations, as long as they're still doing things like camp counseling and going to work and doing those things, I know that they're on at least a recovery road. And out of nowhere, and again, it's 5 months later, I got a call the other night on, again, there was, I think it was the night after or the night before the 4th, and everybody buys fireworks around here. And they went to the movies to avoid all that. But the truth of the matter is she's just one of 3,000 families. I mean, there's a kid that's back at school whose brother is dead and he was shot in the head. That's one family. My family is dealing with it as we can, but when I tell you that there's 3,000 stories, at least, that's the crazy part. And again, I fully realize that the world's back to the rest of the country's back to normal, back to what was normal, because that's what happens. That's what happens after Sandy Hook. That's what happened after Pulse. That's what happened 3 days after Las Vegas. And a lot of it's media driven, a lot of it's other things, politically driven, et cetera. But she called me and said that she's pretty frantic. She said, this is going on, and I'm physically reacting to it. And she was upset that she was physically reacting to it. And I said, hey, listen, this is just, these are the things that are happening. Let's talk. Do you want me to come get you? Do you want me to talk you through this? What do you want to do? And we got through it and everything. However, they're home from school, and mom works. And based on that episode just a week ago, family first. I'm sure you can all relate. I need to be here. And that's why I'm still here. But that's what's going on just in again, a small microcosm of what happens after. Again, I don't know how some of these kids saw what they saw. If you really break it down, you're talking about, again, a campus of 3,000 kids and all the faculty, but you're talking about a few hundred that saw stuff that only tough guys like Justin have seen in their lives. The worst of the worst. Human beings losing their lives right in front of you. There's several hundred people that watched that happen. And again, we all live here in this community together, and everybody's now what's coming next is all the timestamps and the trial. I mean, it's going to be. He was on TV the other day for just some pre-trial motion, and I got nauseous just seeing him.
Yeah, and there's 57 lawsuits filed right now for liability. I mean, it's crazy.
They're suing the gun store. And the gun store is one of the FFLs that I use as a gun owner. Mm-hmm. Great couple that owns it. Hardworking Americans. Guy works for the next city over as a city commissioner. He helped put the power back on after the hurricane. He's one of those dudes that was working, 18-hour shifts, all that kind of stuff. He's a good dude, and he's getting the legal side of it. But he's got the same lawyers that defended against the parents in Sandy Hook. Because again, when you come down to it, then all of a sudden we can just sue Ford for a car crash.
It's true. Yeah. And I mean, look at Santa Fe. So Santa Fe had hundreds of awards for being the safest school, had the best protocols, everything else. They even had a guy from the Secret Service come in and do a risk assessment. Well, guess what? The risk assessment sat on the table, wasn't really reviewed. And where did they go through at? The front door. It's exactly where they went at. And that was one of the most unsecure portions of that school. Everything else, great crisis management plans, good post-recovery operations, medical kits everywhere, people trained, law enforcement doing 1- and 2-man entry team training with administrators, every bit of that. And the individual went to the front door. Why? Because that was the weak point. And they know it. And that's a disadvantage when we're talking school systems, because the schools are already drilling. So people already have the information, right? They know where the loopholes are at. I mean, it could probably even assume the fact that they also know response times. It's not hard to figure those things out at all, especially when you want to do bad things to good people.
Well, and there's someone earlier in the presentation mentioned some sections tabling the notion of responsible, sound-minded adults that care about teachers, that want to have the ability to not just have to barricade themselves in the room, but God forbid the guy comes through the door, be able to take care of it with their own firearm. Get that off the table. If you live in a place that actually the mindset is that it's okay to be the final, protector, and that person wants to do that. And again, I don't want to get into the political sides of it. Teachers are supposed to teach and police are supposed to police. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that we all know that guns are schools that are gun-free zones are the places where these things are happening. And there's a way to stop that or mitigate that, and it's on the table. Please get it off the table.
And it's not just the schools. I mean, I know we're talking about that because, again, it's a hot topic, but it's not just the schools. I mean, you've got, the Annapolis churches, places of worship, that kind of thing, that are also targets at that point in time. You just had the Annapolis news agency that had 5 killed because somebody didn't like what they reported. So it's not just this one portion of what we're talking about right now. It's the whole picture. It's every piece of it. Everything that you can sit here and think in your mind that could go bad probably will at some point in time. luckily enough, we live in a small rural community that it hasn't happened yet. You know, think about, let me throw this out there. Think about the Apple Festival, one of our biggest gatherings of people outside of our community. Think about if somebody came up here and decided to do something bad during that Apple Festival, how in the world is our infrastructure going to be able to handle this thing? Our closest trauma center is Chattanooga for level 1. The next one is in Kennesaw, and the one below that's Grady for anything gunshot wound wise. So you're looking 60-mile radius. There's not enough helicopters to take care of 25 people, you know, should something happen at the Apple Festival. It's a hypothetical. And I don't like doing doomsday stuff because I know a lot of people on my side of the house try to do that, and I don't even like that. But hypothetically thinking, how do we plan for that? How do we get stuff, post-recovery operations, or even in place to respond to something like that? Then you got to think about critical infrastructure. So ETC being one of the backbones, telephone company here, broadband capability, everything else. If we flood the system, can we actually pick up the phone and call? You know what I mean? So you've got people who are worried about it, everything else, this, that, and the other. Communications go down, this, that, and the other. Those are just things that have to be thought about. And that's where this, you know, a group like this can come together and be like, hey, so contingency-wise, let's figure out what we've got. You know, can we go ahead and do an alternate channel on either EMS, or can we get, you know, slave to a repeater with law enforcement to where we can actually split these channels up and actually have a form of communication so we're not hitting or you know, taking infrastructure capability down. Does it make sense?
Justin, that's a real deal consideration. We had that problem here with a series of blunders in advance with having 2 different systems. But long story short, they failed, and one of the action steps that one of the parents who lost a child is taking, and I watched them do it, is getting those towers and the capability of those physical things that help with communication are what they should be, not just taped together and kind of there.
Right.
That's a big thing. I mean, communication during an event like that is critical. I don't have to tell you guys.
I don't know, it's a lot to take in on fire hose and stuff, but I've got a short time with y'all. So
you're chartering a group.
yes, I would. That's my goal. So my passion is this: is that basically bringing the information together, chartering the group, whether it's representatives from the agents, different law enforcement agencies, EMS, city council, everything else. Charter that group, get it in place. From there, have the schools, hospital, infrastructure plans that brought into that table, and all of us to take a look at it.
So those are your deliverables then, are different action plans that are phased, it sounds like,
Yes,
for
sir.
each of these different areas. So nursing home, movie theater,
Yes, sir.
which we have.
Right. And then at that point, once those plans are to the best way that we feel from our knowledge base, then those plans actually shared back out to law enforcement agency, EMS, and everybody else. Because that way you have an identifiable deliverable that you can say, hey, I know that the movie theater thinks this way because this is the plan that they have, but now I've helped them with this plan. So now I know that when I go there, who are my stakeholders? Who's going to be possibly the person I need to get a hold of first to see what's actually going on, everything else.
Is this group that you're looking to charter going to be a long-term or short-term?
It'd be long term because it's things that's going to have to progress as our community grows. It's going to have to do that. Plus, as a charter and the group get together, also driving that information out to our small business owners because they can be affected as well. So, you know, robberies, that kind of stuff, this, that, and the other. We can get those plans in place and then template those plans back out to our small business community and everything else. Makes sense?
Yeah. Are you looking also to have an advisory board over kind of the charter, or how are you
Yes.
going to construct that?
Yeah, it'd be an advisory board with the charter. And again, that would be basically from a law enforcement community, EMS, private sector, you know, commission, everything else. Because again, not only do we have to deal from the management working group side, but we've also got to look at like a budgetary restraint, time restraints, training, that kind of stuff.
Are there RSOs at all the schools? Are there actually armed guards at every school, or is it what's the story where you are?
Yeah, they do. We do have SROs at every school here.
Oh, I said RSO like range safety. I'm sorry, my bad. Safety school officers, correct. Interesting. Well, I think that what you guys are doing is commendable more than I can express on a chat from far away. I wish I was there to shake all your hands because, like I said, being proactive is going to win the day. That's just it. Concerned people who actually care, actually taking action is what's going to mitigate this and prevent it.
That's pretty much all I have. Does anybody have anything? I know we're getting close here, so and I know you guys have got other stuff to do. Yes, sir.
What are the costs of your license or the different group starting?
The cost for me, I'm donating my time, 100%. My involvement with the crisis management working group would be free for me.
So once you get the charter plan group of the stakeholders, then they would buy your software that you talk to them about.
That's an option, or we can find something that's a better cost-effective solution. Again, these are tools that I have with my company that's out there. There's other stuff that's out there too that we can look at. But again, it's one of those things where I don't think there's one specific fit for any specific incident. Does that make sense? Yes, ma'am.
Right now, we're in the city, we're getting ready to look at budgeting.
Uh-huh.
So if there's any money involved, you know.
Right, exactly. And again, that's the key factor of having this group come together like this is we can discuss those things. Because again, if the county doesn't have the ability to budget for additional training for law enforcement agencies, then they're at a loss because they can't do the training they need to address these types of situations. If the schools do not have the ability to budget or use the state assessed budget that Speaker Ralston gave for $52,000 for North Georgia, which is insane to me. Yeah, $52,000, I can tell you from the private sector, is nothing compared to when we go in and actually do threat and vulnerability assessments and things like that. You're looking at minimum $25,000 for myself and the team to come in and do assessments. So $52,000 to address North Georgia and as many schools as we have, both public and private. Absolutely, that's just putting a Band-Aid on something. That's just saying, hey, I've addressed it. That's it.
$52,000 has to be used for capital projects. It cannot be used for someone to come in and assess.
There you go.
It has to be used to purchase something.
Something that everybody agrees upon after someone pays for an assessment.
Exactly.
52 training. More bullets than that.
But yes, ma'am. I mean, the county commission and the budgetary issues are always there. And that's the one thing I've found out talking to people like Kevin, and I spoke to a school out in New Mexico that has an integrated active shooter program, and this guy's former law enforcement act. But they had to actually go back and relook at their budgetary fiscal quarters, and then had to go to the state and say, hey, we're doing this program. Can we get the money established? And then part of the state kicked up and put money into the program, but then they had to go out and actually do fundraising to get it funded. So, again, it always boils down to, and we always go to the conversation, especially when it comes to training or planning or anything like that. One, the time, and two, where's the money coming from? And 90% of the time, well, we can't do that because we don't have the budget. And to be honest with you, we're at a time and place in today's world that's an excuse that needs to be thrown out the door. That should never be tabled. That should never be spoke of. Yes, it's there, but saying no because you don't have a budget, you have a budget. You just got to plan. You got to figure it out. You got to figure out where the funding, revenues are at. You got to figure out what plans you have with the state, what grants and funds are out there to pull from. Those are the kinds of things we need to look at. You have anything on that, Kevin?
Just on the school thing, just to wrap that up, again, back to school, teachers go back in, a week or 2 weeks before kids do. You put one day in there that's dedicated to school safety. I don't think any teacher would object to again, just learning how to use a tourniquet, where they're located in the building, things like that. Some of the fixes don't require a lot of money or a lot of time. They really don't.
I mean, I'll share a little piece with you. I'm sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
No, putting together the comprehensive plan is the tough work.
Right, exactly. Putting that plan together. And I'll share a portion that we did over at North Georgia Christian Academy. They've got great camera coverage on the parking lot. But here's the deal. Had people driving through the parking lot, right? So they're going around the teachers' cars. So here's the deal. It's just a terrain feature. So now push all your teachers' cars out to the perimeter, which forces people to drive through so you actually get camera presence. you actually get either facial identification or license plate. So there's, like Kevin's saying, I mean, there's things that we can generate that maybe people haven't thought about that don't cost anything. It's just it's a protocol that can be put in place that isn't a budgetary restraint. So, and again, I say that being the private sector, but I have to make my money on stuff. But at the same time, I'd much rather be educating and have a little bit of passion about it and put the information out there than I would ever get paid for something, especially if it's going to help my niece survive a situation. That's the biggest thing for me.
There's also more cell phone service than I need.
Yes, sir. That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. And again, that's another piece that we can drive out in this group is figuring out, hey, where's our lapse in coverage as far as that information goes. So, but we're getting pretty close on time. Anybody got anything else? I don't want to hold you guys up any longer. So, do you have anything? Gotcha. Again, I want to thank everybody for being here. I'll stick around after if you guys want to hit me one-on-one. That's fine too. And I can't say this enough. I'm passionate about this. I want to get the education out there. I want to get the solutions out there that you may or may not know of. And I honestly would like to have this charter set up with all of us. I'll hold another one of these. August 8th is my plan, depending on how people's schedules are. Will be more closed environment for us to actually kind of get down and start talking. But other than that, again, thank you all for your time. I really appreciate you being here and taking time out of your guys' workday for doing this. And, Kevin, you got anything?
No, appreciate it as well. Thank you all for listening and caring enough to listen. Appreciate it.
Thanks. I appreciate you being here.
You got
So that's it, guys. Feel free to stick around, check out the kids, walk through, whatever you want to do, all that good stuff. Thank you very much. Thanks, Kev.
You got it, brother. Talk to you soon.
All right, see you, buddy.
Hey, I appreciate it. I look forward to continuing
sounds
the
good.
conversation.
Till next time. Peace.